My fellow Americans,
You might be wondering, why in the world is there a 30-minute countdown before the show starts? Well, we actually start live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, so this whole 30-minute countdown is a chance for YouTube and Rumble to send out their alerts and notifications, so we encourage you to gather up and hang out with everyone in the chat room. So every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time is when we do this show live. You can join us for the countdown if you like, or just set your clock and reminder that at 4 p.m. Eastern is when we go live. You can also make sure you subscribe and turn on that bell notification, so hopefully you will get a notification.
What do you have to say about dictators of countries like Indonesia, who we sell weapons to, yet they are slaughtering people in East Timor? What do you have to say about Israel, who is slaughtering Palestinians, who impose martial law? What do you have to say about that? Those are our allies. Why do we sell weapons to these countries? Why do we support them? Why do we bomb Iraq when it commits similar problems?
There are various examples of things that are not right in this world, and the United States is trying. I really am surprised that people feel that it is necessary to defend the rights of Saddam Hussein, when what we ought to be thinking about is how to make sure that he does not use weapons of mass destruction.
I'd like to...
Who are shouting, just a moment.
I'm not defending them in the least. What I am saying is that there needs to be consistent application of U.S. foreign policy. We cannot support people who are committing the same violations because they are political allies. That is not acceptable. We cannot violate UN resolutions when it is convenient to us. You're not answering my question, Madam Albright.
You briefed the press, did you not, when you were there?
Well, I had several jobs. One of my jobs was that of analyst. I also was an interrogator and indeed briefed the press when we, the CIA, wanted to circulate disinformation on a particular issue. Disinformation is not necessarily a lie. It may be a half-truth. And we would pick out a journalist. I would go do the briefing and hope that he would put the information in print.
What was your percentage of success?
We were pretty successful in planning information of a rather rarefied nature. For instance, if we wanted to get across to the American public that the North Vietnamese were building up their force structure in South Vietnam, I would go to a journalist and advise him that in the past 6 months, X number of North Vietnamese forces had come down the Ho Chi Minh Trail system through southern Laos. Now, there is no way a journalist can check that information. That's data derived from radio intercepts, spy in the sky photography. So either he goes with the information or he doesn't, and ordinarily or usually the journalist would go with it because it looked like some kind of exclusive. Go after these gentlemen. I would be directed to cultivate them, to spend time with them at the Caravel Hotel or the Continental Hotel, to socialize with them, and slowly but surely to try to gain their confidence by dolloping out valid information which was true. And then I would drop into a conversation the data that we wanted to get across which might not be true. One piece of data, for instance, that we managed to plant in the New Yorker magazine had to do with a supposed North Vietnamese effort in 1973 to develop airfields along the border of South Vietnam. The reason we wanted to plant this information was that we were trying to persuade the U.S. Congress that Saigon should continue to get a great deal of aid, and that the North Vietnamese were the chief violators of the ceasefire accord. That was printed in the New Yorker magazine under the byline of Robert Chaplin, as indeed was a great deal of such information which we tried to circulate.
Frank, a two-part question. What were the objectives of or what was the objective of the CIA? What about the moral implications of what you were doing in feeding this information? Did the objective override the moral implications, moral problems?
Well, the objective of the agency in general is to generate intelligence and get it back to Washington, to get at the truth and make sure the policymakers understand it. When you plant disinformation, you are diverging from that objective, and I think probably in retrospect it was very counterproductive. I am, as an ex-CIA agent, opposed to the disinformation activities in which I was involved. I admit that I was involved, and I think it served no useful purpose. Propagandizing the American public or Congress is not the CIA's job. As to the morality of what the CIA was doing or that particular activity, the war was a very relative thing. It was a relativist environment, and morality seldom came into play when you were operating in the field. In my estimation, a CIA man should be amoral. That may sound pretty shocking to somebody, but what if my morality were that of a Nazi or agent, if you will? You wouldn't want me to be your intelligence officer. Keep the morals out of intelligence. Keep the truth in, and stay away from disinformation.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
Colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organization should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossiers. You can't agree to that. How are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals.
So do you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Hey everyone, just as a reminder, our show starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, just a few minutes from now, but I should remind you that we have a daily newsletter. It's totally free. Natalie and I work very hard on it every morning over our cup of coffee, putting the stories together that we think are important that the mainstream media is going to ignore. All you need to do is go to our website. It's just redacted.inc. Put in your email address. We won't ever sell your email to anybody. And then you'll receive a welcome email. And all you need to do is verify that email, and 7 a.m. Eastern Time is when we send out our daily newsletter. And it's about 5 or 10 minutes in length that you can read it over your cup of coffee. And like I said, we cover 4 or 5 of the big stories of the day, plus a couple of things you might have missed while you were sleeping. We try to have some fun with it, add a little humor into it. And again, it's a great way to start off your morning. But it's also a great way for us to stay connected with you as well, because we've been banned and blocked on some of these platforms before, where we haven't been allowed to post anything, not even a community post. So the only way for us to stay connected with you is through our newsletter. We were able to send out a newsletter and say, hey everyone, we're blocked for the next week, and let you know what was actually going on with our show. Anyway, go to redacted.inc and sign up for the free newsletter, and it'll be posted first thing in the morning over your cup of coffee.
This is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CI director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire We had entire training courses.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth. And that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
One of the hopeful things that I've discovered is that nearly every war that has started in the past 50 years has been a result of media lies. The media could have stopped it if they had searched deep enough. If they hadn't reprinted government propaganda, they could have stopped it. But what does that mean? Well, that means basically populations don't like wars. And populations have to be fooled into wars. Populations don't willingly and with open eyes go into a war. So if we have a good media environment, then we'll also have a peaceful environment.
Killed a million people in Iraq.
That is a separate...
You killed a million people in Iraq. It's incredible that you have the brass neck to be sitting here now urging another Iraq war.
George,
after
if
what
I was
you've
still
already
in
done.
Parliament, I...
There can be no doubt that Saddam Hussein has biological weapons and the capability to rapidly produce more, many more. And he has the ability to dispense these lethal poisons and diseases in ways that can cause massive death and destruction. If biological weapons seem too terrible to contemplate, chemical weapons are equally chilling. UNMOVIC already laid out much of this, and it is documented for all of us to read in UNSCOM's 1999 report on the subject. If we consider just one category of missing weaponry, 6,500 bombs from the Iran-Iraq war, UNMOVIC says the amount of chemical agent in them would be on the order of 1,000 tons. These quantities of chemical weapons are now unaccounted for. Dr. Blick says, quipped that, quote, mustard gas is not marmalade. You are supposed to know what you did with it. We believe Saddam Hussein knows what he did with it, and he has not come clean to the international community. We have evidence these weapons existed. What we don't have is evidence from Iraq that they have been destroyed or where they are. That is what we are still waiting for.
Okay, inspection worth doing, everybody's agreed it's worth doing, and it gets stopped.
Yes, sir.
At that moment, we're an automatic pilot as far as you're concerned. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Now, I respect that. But now, it seems to me the Secretary of State might have a slightly different problem. Secretary of State might be sitting there and saying, now look over there on that side. Now, I remember so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, and the 12 people on this side, they're all the ones that said they didn't want to use force. Now, I'm going to have to go tell the president now that we should, or Secretary Cohen, unleash whatever it takes to get it done. And our military assessment is the same as the majors. The majors' assessment is, privately held but publicly acknowledged later, that airstrikes alone aren't going to do this. Saddam's not going to cave on this. So, now here's the deal. I recommended the president have at it and let the chips fall where they may. A reasonable position for the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State to take. But I respectfully suggest, Major, I respectfully suggest they have a responsibility slightly above your pay grade. Slightly above your pay grade. To decide whether or not to take the nation to war alone. Or to take the nation to war partway. Or to take the nation to war halfway. That's a real tough decision. That's why they get paid the big bucks. That's why they get the limos and you don't. I mean this sincerely. I'm not trying to be flip. Because I think, and that's why I said at the outset, the reason why I'm glad you did what you did, we should come to our milk. We should make a decision. But in terms of whether the Secretary of State has no more to consider than you do as the arms inspector, you didn't get in, didn't get my job done, get me in. Period. You made the deal, right? That's the deal. A deal's a deal. Get me in. Scott Ritter, I'm ready to go. It's not how it works. Now, maybe it should work that way. But wouldn't you acknowledge that if you were President of the United States or the Secretary of State, you'd sit there and say, now, okay, old Scotty boy didn't get in. We said he should get in. We want him to get in. It's important that he does get in. They're not going to let him in, so what are we going to do now? We know that France and Russia aren't going to be with us. We're quite confident China's not. We've already run those traps. They're not there. We're not sure where the United States Senate is, but have at it, boys. Go get them. And by the way, Scott and the boys say air power's not enough. I think it's a legitimate debate, Scott, Major. I think it's a legitimate debate. But I don't think we should be putting it in the context of you have somebody up there at state saying, look, how can we weasel out of this agreement? We want to let this guy out there hanging. We're not this. It's a very practical political decision. Same kind of decision General Powell made. Same kind of decision President Bush made. Every president, every Secretary of State has to do it. Like I said, they get paid more than you. Their job's a hell of a lot more complicated than yours. They may have made the wrong decision, and you brought it to light. We should address it. We should say straight up where we are, and we should do it. And for that, I thank you. But it's above your pay grade.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon, and one of the generals called me in. He said, sir, you got to come in and talk to me a sec. He says, we've made the decision we're going to war with Iraq. I said, we're going to war with Iraq? Why? He said, I don't know. He said, I guess they don't know what else to do. He said, I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper. He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.
Hey everyone, Clayton here. The show is going to start at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I should remind you that we have a VIP community. It's our Redacted Rebel VIP community. Now, this show is totally free, what you're watching right now, right? You can subscribe here on YouTube and Rumble, totally free. But if you'd like to support independent journalism, we are run by you. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do this show. We wouldn't be able to hire the team that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the servers that we have. We wouldn't be able to afford the reporters that we have, the team that we have. So you can support us by going to redacted.inc, and on the right side of your screen, you'll see a VIP community button. Just click that, and for the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support us. We put out exclusive content, early interviews that no one else will see, live streams just for our VIP Rebel community. So again, it's totally free to watch this show. But if you do want to support independent journalism, we would really appreciate it. Come on over to redacted.inc, click on that community button, and decide if you want to sign up or not. It's totally up to you. We thank you. And meanwhile, the show will start in just a few moments at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome, everybody, to Redacted. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natalie Morris.
And on this show, we question everything. We cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores, or they put a lot of spin and propaganda on top of it, and we have to try to navigate through it. We don't have all the answers, but we're trying to navigate this crazy clown world together. So thank you guys so much for being a part of our great community here. We really, really appreciate it. We have a very busy show for you on this Thursday. We're going to look at what's going on at the Polish border with Ukraine because stuff's about to hit the fan. And I don't know if you've been following it, but we are going to dive deep into it tonight. And Ukraine is pissed. And in fact, Ukrainian gangs, according to members of the Polish parliament, are leveling death threats against them for blocking the border into Ukraine. What is going on? We are going to cover that part of the story tonight for you.
Plus, Americans are not buying electric vehicles. Dealers are begging the Biden administration, please stop flooding our lots with them because they're sitting there. People are not buying them, perhaps because a new report from Consumer Reports shows that they are 80% more likely to have problems once you buy them. So they're not being sold. What is the Biden administration going to do about this, if anything? Because they're not green, they're not reliable, and they're not being sold. This is a problem.
Also, we're going to look at the U.S. invasion at the border because journalists have been tracking a massive caravan of upwards of 4 million illegal immigrants heading towards the United States. And we are going to find out where that is right now. Is it happening as we speak? Are we about to see this happening over the next few weeks? We're going to be looking more closely at that. Plus, journalist Whitney Webb is going to be joining us tonight to talk about this World Economic Forum false flag. Are we heading into a regional war in the Middle East, specifically with Iran? And we're going to tell you about how all of this will come together. I'm excited to have Whitney back on the show. All of that, plus Henry Kissinger has passed away and how neocons are celebrating his death. Redacted starts right now.
All right, well, welcome to Redacted. Thank you so much for joining us. This is the last day of November, so right before the holiday craze. Thank you for being here as your holidays may get busy. We are going to be here all the way till the end of the year. We're excited to wrap up this year with you. Thank you so much for all the support that you've given us this year as we learn together. We are longtime journalists, lifelong learners, and we cover the stories that the mainstream media either spins exactly as the government asks them to, or they ignore. So we're here to break through narratives. That's what we do here. That's also what we do on our Redacted newsletter. You can find it at redacted.inc. It's a free newsletter. It comes out every day that this show comes out, Monday through Thursday. We cover the same stories that we cover here on the show, so you can read them for yourself. Also, we try really hard to make sure you have links to those stories so you can read original sourcing for yourself and decide how you feel about the stories. You don't always have to agree with us. We don't require that at all. The Redacted newsletter is free. There's no paywall. We don't sell you an extra layer of subscription. Just like this show, you just get it. And we appreciate you being here with us. So make sure that you're subscribed to the Redacted newsletter so that you can read up on these stories and come here and decide how you feel about them when you participate in the chat. We appreciate that very much. It's redacted.inc.
That's right. Well, things are coming to a boiling point in Poland. Polish truckers are pissed off at Ukraine, and they are not giving up. Perhaps taking a page out of the Canadian truckers' convoy handbook, they have started a round-the-clock blockade of the Ukrainian border at multiple border crossings. This started last week, but it is really coming to a head now, and they're even setting up permanent encampments now. They're not moving. Thousands of trucks are now stuck, not moving on purpose. And what are they so pissed about? What are they so pissed about? Well, they are losing out to Ukrainian companies, which are offering cheaper prices, cheaper transportation within the European Union. And it certainly helps when your entire economy is in Ukraine is subsidized by the United States and the EU, and Polish truckers then get pushed to the side. The transportation coalition gets pushed to the side. So Poland can't keep up with basically this sort of soft trade cooperation between the EU and Ukraine. How can you possibly compete with that when you're basically getting free transportation for your goods and services? What about the truckers that work there for their livelihood that are not being subsidized by the EU, the corrupt EU, and the United States? So farmers and truckers have been blocking the Medkia border crossing since last Thursday, and among other border crossings, from about 9 a.m. to about 8 p.m. at night, they were blocking it. Then on Monday, they began doing it 24/7, blockade of every entry point. Sorry, you're not coming across here. And this is expected to last until January 3rd, which to me sounds like an arbitrary day. Like, why January 3rd? But we'll see what happens after January 3rd. So this means all through the Christmas holiday, by the way. All of it through the Christmas holiday. Only 2 trucks, according to reports, are being let through every hour. And who's a representative of the association, he told the Polish press agency, the PAP, that only 2 trucks are being let through every hour. And even then, those exemptions would be made for humanitarian aid and war supplies. So, okay, now we're seeing cargo containers being set up along the Polish border. They're being brought in, and they are setting up to provide food and shelters. You can take a look at this as the people, they go inside here. You can see some just some food and items as they open up this cargo container to try to keep warm, because, you know, they're just there with their diesel-powered trucks, and they're just hanging out. They don't really have much else. They have some portable space heaters in some of these. You can see on the wall there, some of these space heaters here in some of these cargo containers. It is freezing.
So can I just maybe offer a posit of why January 3rd? Perhaps because these are perishable goods. They're things that were farmed, right? And Ukraine exports a lot of grain. They also, I think they have factories for Zara. That's obviously not going to expire. But things might go bad. Going
into Ukraine.
Going out of Ukraine.
Going out of Ukraine and into Ukraine.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, it could be. It could be perishable related items. But again, a lot of what's supposed to be flowing across this border here is military aid, specifically war supplies, humanitarian aid. So medicines and weapons. Like, that's what's supposed to be flowing across the border here. Now, what's interesting here is, according to Polish parliament, members of Polish parliament, Ukrainian gangs are threatening them to open up the border or else. Yes, threatening violence against members of the Polish parliament. This statement was made on the floor. This statement was made on the floor of parliament by Professor Andrzej Zapolski, who let the cat out of the bag. That not only has he experienced this, other members of parliament are also being threatened. These are his words. Watch.
Marszałek, Wysoka Izbo. Dzisiaj wójt gminy Radymno, Bogdan Szylar, publicznie poinformował, że kierowane są wobec niego groźby karalne przez środowiska ukraińskie za to, że wydał pozwolenie transportowcom na protest w Korczowej. Proszę Państwa, poinformował, że wprost jego rodzina jest zastraszana. Parę dni temu spotkałem się z podobnym przypadkiem, kiedy to kolejny raz pojechałem do Korczowej i tam tydzień wcześniej przez kilka godzin przebywałem z transportowcami ze Słowacji, którzy wyjechali, próbowali protest organizować na Słowacji, solidaryzując się z Polakami, ale cóż, okazało się, że poinformowali Polaków, że po kilku godzinach musieli zaprzestać protest, ponieważ do ich rodzin przyszli jacyś Ukraińcy, grożąc wprost śmiercią. Szanowni Państwo, czy pozwolimy, ażeby ukraińskie mafie, które być może osłaniają oligarchiczny transport przez Polskę, zastraszały polskich samorządowców? Czy pozwolimy na to, żeby polskie służby nic w tej kwestii nie robiły? Proszę Państwa, nie może być sytuacji, gdzie jakikolwiek przedstawiciel administracji państwowej czy samorządowej jest zastraszany, bo pozwalamy na sytuację, z którą mieliśmy do czynienia w latach 90.
So he goes on to talk, but he's basically saying the Ukrainian gangs, the Ukrainian mafia threatening members of parliament because of this situation. It's terrifying. It's terrifying for them. So open up the border or else.
And Ukraine has been, or I'm sorry, Poland, the members of parliament have been warning about this, that Polish farmers are being crushed and they will act accordingly.
Right. Yeah. And so now they're taking matters into their own hands. And, you know, it is very similar. I mean, I think of shades of, you know, what we saw in the Netherlands, the Netherlands farmers coming out, of course, against nitrogen, you know, backlash. And then we see the trucker convoy in Canada. We saw a massive trucker convoy in Washington, D.C. that got very little attention. We covered it here, saying enough is enough on government mandates. So they're saying, hey, watch what happens when we shut down the entire economy, because we can do that as truckers. Like you guys want your goods and services delivered. You want your food and everything delivered. We will show you what happens when we stop working.
Yes.
We are tired of being walked on by the European Union with this soft trade deal with Ukraine. You know, that's what happens, I guess. So open up your borders or else. Ukrainian gangs are very strong in Poland.
And I think Ukraine ought to be careful, because if they want to be part of NATO, they shouldn't be threatening other NATO allies, right?
Well, yeah. Well, today
Poland is part of NATO.
Yeah, I mean, today we got what is it? A working partnership now. Ukraine has now.
They call it interoperable partnership
for NATO. So
NATO is saying, yeah, it's sort of like a mentorship program. You know.
Yeah, it's not. It's like an internship. You're not actually a part of NATO yet. You're an interoperable member now.
So now, are we seeing NATO eat its own?
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, I guess they would allow that. Sure.
So, I mean, this is what happens, by the way, when you let in 3 million Ukrainians into your country, right? I mean, not all of them are software engineers. Many of them are excellent software engineers, and not all of them are preschool teachers. Turns out that many of them are violent criminals. And this is what Polish leaders are dealing with now. And they have to contend with being threatened by gangs for a decision for what's happening right now at their border. Ukrainian police are even crossing the border, leading VIPs into Poland with border guns. With guns. If you have money and a luxury car, just come to the border and the Ukrainian police will just escort you across right into Poland. Watch. Move out of the way. He's got guns. Get your nice luxury cars. Come on, right through. You got a Porsche? Come on in. Smash the cell phone.
To escape conscription?
No, I don't know who was in those cars, and I don't know exactly the context of that, but, you know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. But that's how you get across the border.
You bring police.
Just pay off some police officers and they'll escort you across. But only medical supplies and weapons were supposed to be coming across, right, into Ukraine, right? But Polish truckers are also taking to social media asking, like, why are truckloads of luxury cars going in? What's the purpose of that? Like,
into Ukraine?
Well, why? Yeah, why are these crossing into? Why are these crossing in? Watch this.
Proszę bardzo, jesteśmy na przejściu w Dorochusku. To jest przewóz typowo komercyjny. To przecież dobra luksusowe nie są przewozem pierwszej potrzeby. Proszę zobaczyć, jakie auta jadą na Ukrainę i na takie przewozy strona ukraińska nie chce się zgodzić na zezwolenia.
So that's imperative during war, by the way. You absolutely need those luxury cars. So, Polish politician, entrepreneur Raphael Meckler said today that Ukraine is even calling this out in their own media. And that's how I managed to see this. This is in Ukrainian media here, and he highlighted this particular passage here. He says, I appreciate the honesty with which Ukrainians express themselves in the media. Here they write directly that Ukrainian carriers transport goods in the EU in abundance, cheaper than the Polish do. In the world of mobility packages, Polish governance, or taxes on means of transport, the Ukrainian side does whatever it wants and benefits from the lack of regulations that Poles have. So they're free to just flow across the border right now. So we're watching this closely. This seems to be a tinderbox right now. When you're bringing in cargo containers and you're hunkering down and you're getting food and portable heaters and you're setting up encampments now at all of these border crossings, that's not good.
When you think about what Brexit did to the EU borders, right? If we want to, living in Europe, if you want to import anything from the United States, from outside of Europe, you pay massive import tax. So why would things be flowing easily across that border when the rest of us have to pay such high levies on anything that comes from outside of the EU? Why are they getting this pass right now?
Right. Yeah. It's fascinating.
Right.
Well, my thoughts on the luxury cars are, they're obviously going to melt them down for bullets because they don't have money for anything else. If we're spending $100 billion to give them weapons, who's got money left for luxury cars? Right?
I don't know.
Yeah. I guess the money
melting them down for bullets.
I guess the money's just flowing pretty freely right now throughout across these borders. So we'll keep an eye on it. We'll be watching what happens in Poland. This is an important story that we wanted to bring to you, and we'll look at that a little bit further. But also, we're going to look at the United States coming up here in just a moment, and all of those electric cars. The great electric car scam that's being perpetrated on the American people. That, of course, it's better for the environment. It's better for you long term. It's better for the infrastructure. All of those things. Americans are seeing that the emperor has no clothes. And so why are these EVs sitting on lots and not being sold? Turns out Americans perhaps don't want to buy these electric cars. We're going to look at that story. We're also going to look at Whitney Webb is going to be joining us in just a few minutes on the World Economic Forum and a false flag operation that could be unfolding over the next few months, could lead us into a massive war in the Middle East. We will talk about that with her. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Aura, because right now, let Aura do all of the hard work for you and keep you safe online this holiday season. I mean, if you've ever wondered, why am I getting so many robocalls? Why am I getting so many spam emails? Why is my credit card being used in nefarious places? Why am I getting weird text messages? That's because data brokers love to, steal and buy your information. And Aura can protect you against that. So if you're tired of receiving these spam phone calls and all of that stuff, and you're worried about your personal information being sold on the dark web, our sponsor Aura can actually identify these data brokers exposing your info, submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Brokers are legally required then to remove all of your info if you ask them to, but they make it super hard to do it. But Aura has figured out how to do it for you. They will handle it for you. And they also do so much more to protect your family from online threats. So not just to go after these data brokers, but they also have fantastic parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and so much more, all at an affordable price. So right now, you can find out how much of your personal data has been sold around on the internet by going to aura.com/redacted, and you can start a 2-week free trial. And in that 2 weeks, you will be stunned at how much of your personal data is being shopped around on the internet. Something you might have signed up for years ago, you don't even remember it, then it's metastasized. Aura can get rid of it. And you can find so much of it in that first 2-week free trial. Just go check them out. Aura.com/redacted. We'll have a link in the description below. Aura.com/redacted.
Well, Americans don't want these crappy electric vehicles, no matter how much they are offered in tax incentives. A group of about 4,000 car dealerships are begging President Biden to tap the brakes on electric vehicle mandates because EVs are just sitting there on lots. Here is Tom Maioli from Celebrity Motor Cars, who was one of the dealers who signed this letter, and he explains it to CNBC.
And this is basically the voice of the consumer. This is not the dealer. This is the voice of the consumer. And what's happening is the manufacturer is being forced to produce these EVs. They're shipping them to the dealerships, and they're backing up on the lots. Our average day supply pre-COVID was 60 to 90 days supply of inventory. During COVID, it was less than 30 because of the supply chain issues. We're now backed up to 12 months with EVs. Consumers don't want them. They're not buying them. We have up to $15,000 in rebates from the manufacturer and $7,500 tax credits. We're talking $22,500.
Now, the host goes on to say that despite these deep discounts, they're just sitting there. He talks about a Ford F-150 electric truck with only 25 miles on it, so brand new, marked down to $7,000. Brand new Ford truck. That's a $20,000 discount. Listen how the dealer responds to that super cheap car that no one wants. And then listen how he makes the distinction between these EVs that the government's pushing out and, of course, Tesla, which is a different story.
Still can't sell it. Consumer doesn't want it. The consumer's in fear over the infrastructure. The infrastructure is not there. The White House and the Biden administration and got way out over its skis with this mandate, and the consumer has to buy into it, and they're not. And the problem that exists now is, they force the manufacturers to spend all this money to build these plants and produce these vehicles, but the consumers aren't buying into it. They're afraid of range. They're afraid of where they're going to charge. And we're not talking about, listen, Tesla is a vanity purchase. People have to have a Tesla. They have a second vehicle. Most people can't afford the first vehicle, never mind the second vehicle. And these people are coming out to the dealerships and they're buying these vehicles and they're afraid. These are average working American people. They're putting their families in the car. Moms are driving their kids to school. Dads have to get to work. And, if they have to charge on the road and it takes 30 minutes to charge.
Okay, so this host cuts him off, but he talks about how these are not the Tesla driving crowd of the Silicon Valley. These are working people who can't be bothered to stop for a charge, or they don't want to pay the extra electricity bill because they're already hit enough with rising electricity costs, or they just don't have the infrastructure in their town that works into their daily life where they drop the kids off somewhere and they go to work. They're not like my father, who is constantly running to the Home Depot to charge his Tesla at the supercharger, and then his wife has to pick him up, and then she has to drop him back off when the car is full. It's a ridiculous inefficiency, but that's how my father lives his life with their Tesla, right?
It's like,
how much.
Adding two extra gas-powered trips to charge the electric vehicle.
Yes.
There's just some irony in there.
There's a lot.
I don't know if anybody missed that.
Honey, can you come? He doesn't have a truck, but I'm just saying. Honey, can you go bring the truck and pick me up?
They do. They use the Infinity gas-powered car to drop the Tesla off and then come back for it later. And they bought this Tesla, I think, 5 years ago with a lifetime charge card, so they can go to these supercharged places in the Bay Area, and they do that. But if they sell the car, they can't even sell it because that lifetime charge does not pass down. So yes, he's right. It's a status symbol. It's definitely not an efficiency. Here is the letter that we're talking about from the dealership. They're saying, we are asking you to shut down proposed regulations mandating battery vehicles, productions, and distributions. Take a look at where these businesses, the dealerships that signed this, do business. They're in all 50 states. And heavy in California, interestingly enough, where my father lives, where I'm from, and where there have been extra incentives from the state to sell EVs. And even there, they just can't sell them. Is it because EVs are so much more eco-friendly and the consumer just doesn't care about that? That's not the case. In fact, there's no research that EVs are more eco-friendly. That's a lie. We've shown you this data. They are incredibly taxing on the electric grid, which California doesn't have a lot of, and they, in places that rely on gas-powered power plants or coal, charging all of these EVs causes more greenhouse gas emissions, not less. Something the dealers quite rightly point out, though, is that the U.S. should wait until EV battery components are domestically sourced. Well, let's take a look at that for a second. What do they mean? They're referring to lithium and cobalt. Currently, those essential components for EVs are mined overseas. We've shown you the awful way that cobalt is mined in the Congo at a high cost to human life. Here is how the 70% of the world's cobalt comes from Congo, and these are cobalt mines. Incredibly tough working conditions, high fatality rate, low life expectancy. Here are the tunnels that are dug for workers to go and find more. These tunnels are unsupported. Men and boys regularly are buried alive in them because they collapse. The cobalt is then washed in rivers by women and girls. That polluted water causes disease for the entire population. We've discussed this in our interview with Siddharth Kara, the author of this book, Cobalt Red. Please watch it if you haven't already, or go back to watch it. So what do the dealers mean then, that we should wait until the U.S. can mine these things domestically? Well, the U.S. does have a plan to do this. They've paid lip service saying we do want to mine these things ourselves instead of rely on China or Congo. But here is why they haven't been able to. This is from the Institute for Energy Resources, a research saying that the Inflation Reduction Act from the Biden administration provides incentives and subsidies for car buyers and automakers. Here's what it is. But this is a dilemma. Look at the middle of this paragraph. Despite dozens of potential mines in the U.S. and Canada, most projects are in various stages of development and are years away from production, particularly because of what we call climate babies or environmental lawsuits delaying development due to multiple entry points for litigation in U.S. regulatory law. So even if we start now, we're not going to be able to keep up with what we would need to make all these EVs. That's in the U.S., though. What's sad about this is that cobalt workers would not work in those same conditions that they do in the Congo. It just wouldn't be allowed. We have OSHA. We have eyes. We wouldn't allow this. But when environmentalists maybe don't think about or just don't care about is that when they sue to block this mining in the U.S., they're making it worse for people working in the Congo. And what happens is that these much less regulated or not regulated at all, in the case of the Congo, that's where it's mined. And it's worse for the planet and it's worse for humans. So given that the Biden administration wants to mine these minerals, where are we with that? Well, Google Bard made me this nice list of cobalt mines currently in the works in the U.S. See how it says there, we already have Idaho cobalt operations, except we don't. Google Bard is Google's AI program. And they're absolutely wrong. Take a look at this. Just a few months ago, the Australian company that owns that mine ceased production because of high costs. You would think that the Biden administration, if they wanted these minerals so badly, would subsidize some of these costs, but they don't. Okay, what about lithium mines? Google Bard made this list of lithium mines in the United States. This is correct. Silver Peak Lithium Mine in Nevada is currently active. It's the only lithium mine in the United States, even though the United States pretty much invented lithium mining. And they generate a whole 1% of the world's annual lithium. Way to go, 1%. The rest of it comes mostly out of Chile and Argentina. That's 75%. So if we wait until the U.S. can domestically source these EV components, we'll probably be waiting forever, right?
Yeah, I mean, because Chile, is nationalized theirs because of a national security risk.
Yeah.
So that other people can't swoop in and steal it from them. They're like, wait a second, these EV minerals are so valuable, lithium, cobalt, et cetera, that we've nationalized it so that, and you see companies like Ford, Volkswagen, GM, Tesla are all, in fact, trying to buy up these mines or invest in these mines because they know how incredibly valuable they are. And the United States has virtually none of it. Zero.
Right. Another thing we don't have, though, is a way to make them a bit safer because lithium battery fires do happen. And when they happen on electric cars, they can be extremely dangerous because they typically take hours to put out because these batteries release flammable gases even after the flames have been put out. So we're seeing a huge increase in what we're calling light EV fires. Light EVs are not electric vehicle cars. They're, if you look at this graphic, mostly electric scooters, electric bicycles, electric lawnmowers. According to a report by EV FireSafe, there were over 500 EV battery fires in the first half of this year alone, resulting in 138 injuries and 36 deaths. 36 deaths, that's a lot. That's a significant increase from the 236 fires that were recorded last year. Here is just one of those headlines where 4 people died because a bike shop had a fire in their batteries that spread to an apartment building nearby. But let's get back to, these are not EV vehicles that you buy and drive around, your city. These are small vehicles. So we're focusing here on electric vehicle cars, and the Biden administration is pushing those. Well, this new Consumer Reports piece is not going to help at all. Consumer Reports found that EVs from 2021 through 2023 encountered nearly 80% more problems than vehicles propelled by internal combustion engines. So take a look at this here. They're making this distinction between hybrids, electric vehicles, and plug-in vehicles. So the baseline here is gas-powered cars, and we're showing how much more likely you are to have a problem. Well, EVs in the middle have quite a lot of problems, but the plug-in hybrids, which use plugging into a vehicle charging station versus regular hybrids, which are the kind of cars that sort of generate electricity on their own without plugging them in. Do you know the distinction between those types of cars that charge themselves?
Years ago, I had a hybrid.
Right.
Back in the day, I had a Ford Escape
not
hybrid.
Plug in. Right.
No, it didn't plug in. It
Right.
just used inertia and brakes.
Yeah.
Friction from the brakes to recharge it.
So if we can go back to that chart, those actually are better than only gas-powered vehicles. They have fewer problems because you do put gas in them, but the engine charges itself while you are driving. So those seem to be just fine. So given that these cars are not reliable, they don't go very far, they have a terrible track record on climate, and people don't want them, will the Biden administration stop using our tax dollars to push them to lots which just become museums? Let us know what you think of that in the chat.
Well, and I feel like it's all financial too, because there's been technologies using like, microalgae, where they can actually produce oil in the desert that's actually drinkable and stuff. It's like these technologies that exist that could actually fix the infrastructure that we currently have and not have to make everything electric. So it's like they choose the worst ways to mine the cobalt and all that other stuff instead of these technologies that have been around. Like there was a guy that ran from coast to coast on 2 gallons of water in a hydro car.
Yeah.
Like the technology is there, but they somehow bury it all the time.
Right.
Oh yeah, there's a long history of them burying it. I mean, heck, sodium ion technology, right? Sodium batteries have been around for hundreds of years. And why did those get suppressed? Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. They got suppressed because there was way more money in the other version of the batteries, right? In lithium and all of this other stuff. So now there's a big push for sodium ion. If they can do that, you won't have these deadly fires, right? And salt, far less destructive.
Right. And I'm not saying OSHA is perfect. Clearly they're not. But are we able to bring back up the image of people working in the Congo? There's no way that United States would have people working and dying in these big unsafe fields, collapsed in tunnels, and that would be the way that cobalt is mined. The United States absolutely could do it better, safer, and greener. In fact, we have technologies to mine lithium that are far greener than the way it's currently done. We just don't put it into use, again, because of litigation from these climate babies. And also because, we just don't look in the right area for solutions. So EVs seem to be a solution, in search of a problem.
It always pays to follow the money, because what happens is that these technologies, the auto industry will buy the patents and then bury it. They buried the patent to that battery you're talking about. Like they buy the patent and then they bury it, and then no one can make it at that point.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They go into Tesla's hotel room in New York City, and the FBI basically steals all of his documents, right? And where's all that technology? Buried, hidden.
Well, let us know what you think of that. We have more news to get to. We're going to talk about the U.S. border invasion and how that continues to be a problem. We're also going to talk about the censorship industrial complex and what was left out of that whistleblower report that we talked about yesterday. Plus, crocodile tears for warmonger chief of staff Henry Kissinger. I loved Caitlin Johnstone's take on it. It's like he only looks good in hindsight because we have so many worse warmongers since. So we're going to take a look at his track record. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at Bio-Optimizers, because their Black Friday mega sale is still going on till the end of November. So you got just one more day. And this mega deal is only available for our listeners. Right now, we have those ever-growing Black Friday wish lists, holiday wish lists, but we want to make sure that you keep your health as a priority on your wish list, because we all know the importance of sleep when it comes to our overall well-being. And while some say you can't buy a good night's sleep, well, you can buy some help. This is with Magnesium Breakthrough from Bio-Optimizers. It's a true game changer in the quest for a better night's sleep. And of course, we rave about this all the time, because anytime we're feeling a little restless, Magnesium is a great natural supplement to take so that you don't feel just groggy in the morning. Magnesium supports a balanced inflammatory response, promotes healthy restorative sleep, relaxation, calmness, and better stress response. So again, don't miss this mega Black Friday sale happening right now through the end of November. The biggest discounts you can get and amazing gifts with purchases only available on biooptimizers.com/redacted with code redacted. Again, so choose your health this Black Friday with Black Friday deals in this holiday season. biooptimizers.com/redacted and enter code redacted at checkout.
Well, take a look at your screen right now. What you are seeing is just the beginning of a 4 million strong illegal immigrant caravan heading to the United States. Our next guest, independent journalist Ryan Mata, has been covering this extensively over the past couple of months. He's been watching and warning the United States what's coming. 4 million illegal immigrants heading for the United States. And Ryan joins us now to dive more deeply into this story. Ryan, good to see you. Thank you for all the work that you've been doing in cataloging and trying to warn the American people of what's coming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Clayton. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. So you've been down at the border, many, many times. You have tens of thousands of hours of footage, and you've been tracking this caravan. And I don't want to be alarmist at all, but when you have seen the numbers, you've been cataloging these numbers, and your numbers are pointing to around 4 million illegal immigrants heading to the United States. Am I accurate in that number?
Yes, you are, Clayton. And that is, you had interviewed Carlos Arellano. So Carlos Arellano is he's a very brave whistleblower that came forward to expose these the child trafficking that's going on. He also speaks Spanish, so he's actually been reading the Mexican news, the local newspapers in Mexico. They're the ones who have been reporting on this and warning us, because the cities in Mexico, the citizens there are getting very upset because the migrants are basically overflowing their cities. There's reports coming in that when these migrants are actually riding the train of death to America and they make it to a certain point in Mexico, they're waiting in Mexico to get a message from CBP on the app telling them to come. So these towns in Mexico where all these trains are riding, it's overwhelming. And then you see the train bridge above me, right? The train just goes,
right.
It literally every 30 minutes, it must only go a couple miles into Mexico, stop, and then go back into the United States. And it just goes back and forth, back and forth.
Filled with migrants.
No, you can't see the migrants. So they're getting off the bridge. You know what I'm saying? They're probably on the back cars. We can't see it on our side. They get off and then they come and they walk right across there in Eagle Pass.
It's unbelievable. So when I say 4 million illegal immigrants, the footage that you're seeing here on your screen that you've been capturing, drone footage at Eagle Pass and on a regular basis, the thousands that are coming across, when do you think the bulk of the 4 million are set to arrive in the United States? Are we seeing it now, or is it going to be months, or is it later in 2024?
I think we're already seeing it, Clayton. They are obviously already showing up at our shores. That's why we actually went down to Texas. We went down there on November 18th, so about 2 weeks ago now. That's where all this drone footage is from. That's why we went down there, because we heard from Carlos that this was coming and that it would be arriving sometime in the beginning of November. So around November 1st, and roughly over a 90-day period, based off of the intel that we got from one of our buddies, muckrakers, who actually got dropped off over in Colombia and made the trip with the migrants all the way through Panama, all the way through the Darien Gap, rode the train of death up to America. And it took them, I want to say, about 6 weeks to make it here. So you figure that the farthest point of that caravan, maybe 90 days, roughly, there's that many coming here.
So we could be seeing really by mid-January into early February when the bulk of this migrant pattern is coming to us.
Absolutely. We're seeing it already. Look what's happening in Arizona. They're literally having to shut down. There's migrants, I forget the article, but they just published it. Allie Bradley over on Twitter reported on it. There's migrants in Arizona that are being stuck out in the desert. So they're coming across the border. They're registering on the Border Patrol app. And then Border Patrol is supposed to go out and basically pick up these migrants. They made it onto USA shore. They've claimed asylum. They're walking through the desert. Well, Border Patrol is so busy. They're so overwhelmed right now that Border Patrol can't get out and pick up these migrants. So the migrants are now setting boulders in the road and crashing cars in America. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got injured, but the car was destroyed from the migrant that did it. So if we got a point where Border Patrol can't even do their job, they can't even process these people fast enough, what do you think it's going to look like when just waves of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people hit these processing facilities? There's nowhere to go. Airports are overrun. Everything is overrun right now. We're already seeing it, Clayton.
You've been alerting the government. You've been telling the government about it. What response have you gotten from the Biden administration? Have they said, we're taking action on this, where we've got it covered, don't worry about this, Ryan?
Oh yeah, they're on top of it, Clayton.
Right.
They couldn't actually respond to me fast enough. I didn't even make it off the plane before I was getting texts from the Biden administration.
So you were down there just recently, of course, and the drone footage. I want you to tell the story of interacting with the Border Patrol, because you had your drones up capturing these individuals, and they're on to you now. I mean, are they trying to hide what they're doing in different parts, or can you talk about what you experienced with the Border Patrol?
So the first time we got down there, I had 2 altercations with Border Patrol. I thought we were allowed on public property or private property to walk along the edge of the border where all that razor wire is. And we did the first day. Didn't have too many issues. National Guard was who we ran into the first time. I guess we weren't in the right area. I was kind of more off to the right of those bridges, kind of cruising along the border. I actually rented a Dodge F-150. If anybody's going to go down to the border, I suggest renting a white Dodge F-150 or Dodge Ram 1500 4-door. That's the exact same white truck that National Guard and Border Patrol use. So if you're going to cruise along the border, you really blend in. You can you're allowed to be there. They'll use color of law and tell you that you're not. You're allowed to drive there. We did. But if they stop you, they see you, they tell you to get off and whatever. So National Guard was really nice. Then we started to run into Border Patrol. Border Patrol is the one who's going to use the color of law to basically try to intimidate you into leaving. And now they have a dedicated media area. So you're kind of roped off. You can't report. You can't see everything that you want to see because they kind of put you into a specific area. But luckily I had my drone, so I was able to get around that. It seems like that they don't want us there for some reason.
Yeah, for some reason. I wonder what it happens to be.
And then that's it. You were asking about the drone footage. So we had got there in the morning. We had just got there. I told Clayton right before we went live, every time I've gone to Eagle Pass about 4 different times, I would have to get down to Eagle Pass and maybe stay there for 30 minutes or an hour. Or maybe when I got there might be 1 or 2 people, maybe 3 coming, and you could see a couple down the river walking up. But it wasn't like those giant caravans, just row after row, just a never-ending sea of people. So I flew my drone up, and as soon as I got my drone out to the bridge, I seen the people on the back of the shipping container. You can probably throw the video up, and you'll see them all standing on the back of the shipping container. And then there's 2 bridges, one on the right. I was right in between them. And then I went over to the one on the right. When I got over to the one on the right, I seen that Border Patrol had set up a ladder over the shipping containers. There was migrants like reaching down, pulling each other up onto the shipping container. And then Border Patrol had put up a ladder so they could walk down. And then as soon as they see my drone out there, it immediately stopped. The ladder came down. People were starting to come back up on the shipping containers and starting to go down. And then they started sending them to the other side. And then within 10 minutes, the whole back of those shipping containers was covered in migrants because the Border Patrol's like, wait, we can't be filmed letting these people into this country. We're not supposed to be doing these things. Wait, we got to stop. And that's when they sent the sheriff out to try to tell me that they had a helicopter flying up and that I had to take my drone down because they had a helicopter in the sky. And I said, well, I'm sorry, sir. I'm a licensed drone pilot in all 50 states. And actually on my device here, I'm connected to air traffic control and you don't have a bird in the air. So if there is one, I'll get a warning and I'll actually be forced to take my drone down. Until that happens, I'm going to continue to fly my drone. And he goes, that's not the point. We have operations. And he started giving me a hard time, huffing and puffing. And then he literally just walked away.
He's like, oh, you found me out.
Happened?
Oh, you know the truth. Yeah, that's anyone who operates a drone like I do. It gives you an alert right there to let you know that you have to get out of that airspace immediately, and it'll actually move you. It actually forces you, the drone, out of the airspace. You can't control it. So that's great. That's amazing. Speaking of aircraft, a big story that you've actually been covering is also that American taxpayers are footing the bill for the tickets for airline passengers to be flying and being transporting these illegal immigrants in the United States. This is unbelievable. So most Americans think that, our tax dollars are going to a porous border. Little do they know that their tax dollars are actually going to transport them via aircraft in the United States. Can you talk about this story that you just broke?
Yeah, absolutely. Big shout out to Hernando Arce. That's at Hernando_RC over on Twitter, and then _Beyond the Mask. They're the reason that I was actually down in San Antonio the first time. They're doing great work. They're citizen journalists that are out there every day with nobody. Very little followings, very small, but they're out there every day filming. And I met Hernando at one of these protests, and he's the one who also speaks Spanish. So he goes to the migrant processing facilities. So after the migrants come across the border, they go to a processing, or they go right under the bridge, they get checked in, they get on a bus, and then they get shipped to a processing center. And then from that processing center, they get shipped up into San Antonio. And this is where we were at in San Antonio. This is where Hernando Arce was. And he was out there filming and he was interviewing one of the illegal immigrants. And another one came up to him and says, hey, man, can you give me a ride to the airport? And he goes, ride to the airport. Why do you need a ride? He goes, well, I don't have any money and my plane leaves at 3 o'clock.
I don't have any money. I don't have any money and my plane leaves at 3 o'clock. Okay.
Yep. And he goes, let me see your plane ticket. So he shows him his plane ticket and he goes, okay, well, why don't you just call an Uber? And he goes, well, I can't afford an Uber. I don't have any money. And he hems and haws and he takes him. So once he gets in the car, the migrant actually starts opening up to him. He saw that he was interviewing somebody else. The migrant starts opening up to him. And when the migrant starts opening up to him, he starts telling him, he said, hey, and Hernando goes, is there anything you'd like to tell us about these facilities? And the migrant was kind of upset, complaining about it. He goes, absolutely. He goes, what's really bizarre is they kept me at this facility for 13 to 15 days until one of my family members could buy me a plane ticket. Then after they bought me the plane ticket, they wanted to take a copy of the receipt and log it into their system, implying that they were going to be billing the US government for the plane ticket that his relatives just bought him. They wouldn't let him leave this facility until he had purchased a plane ticket. Then once he had purchased a plane ticket, they just let him, like they didn't give him a ride to the airport. They didn't help him with anything, nothing.
They just let him out and he gets to go and he gets to fly wherever he wants. And where exactly is he flying to? Where exactly is he flying to then? Are they sending them to different locations where he's going to live with some sort of a family? I mean, I just don't understand where they're shuttling him off to.
I don't know. Yeah, he said he's going with his family. His family was the one who's purchased the plane ticket. And I believe he was going to Montana.
Okay. So his family was purchasing the plane ticket.
Sure. Yeah, that's how yeah, exactly.
Right.
Okay. It's crazy, is it not?
Right. Yeah, his family's got credit cards. They're able to pay plane tickets, book him on a plane. I'm sure that all sounds totally above board. And then the American taxpayers then are refunding the ticket cost for whomever actually did pay for that airline ticket up front.
Absolutely, yes. That's what they're claiming, allegedly. And then Hernando followed up with him because he asked that he had his face blurred. After Hernando blurred his face, he sent the video to him, upheld it. The guy reached back out and Hernando was asking him more questions. He said, well, how did you know? Like, you were at this facility for 13 days. How did you know that that's what was going on there? Like, how did you know? And he goes, oh, that's the talk. Like, all the migrants that are at these facilities, like the word on the streets inside these facilities that this is what these people are doing. And then not only that, he was complaining that the employees that are getting food that's supposed to be for the migrants, and then they're giving it, then the employees are eating it there. So the employees are eating the food that's supposed to be given to these migrants as well. And he said the food's horrible. It's juice boxes, slices of bread. Not that I am encouraging like giving these people 5-course meals, but when we're paying these NGOs hundreds of millions of dollars, where is that money going? Who audits these companies? Where is the oversight over these NGOs?
Yeah, there is none. There is none. This is a national tragedy. The United States is changing right before our eyes. And if you don't think that this idea of replacing the Americans with illegal immigrants is happening, you're fooling yourself. You're a useful idiot then. It's happening right before your eyes.
Absolutely. And what do you think? I mean, if we have 4 million coming, and then they're not going to stop. So if they're already, and every single time they've ratcheted up. So if we have 4 million coming, you're going to assume the next is going to be 5 and then 6. And before you know it, we're at a point where we've increased the US population size by 10% over a 4-year period. That is absolutely catastrophic. And not only are we doing that, we're also putting some of these people on universal basic income. If you come across the border with a woman and child, you can apply and get $2,200 a month of universal basic income. Healthcare, insurance, food, UBI. I mean, you got it made. The system is broken when you're treating illegal immigrants better than you're treating veterans. Period.
Right. That's exactly what's happening. And all you need to do is look at the riots in Ireland over the past week to see what happens when your entire system is crushed under the weight of migrants. They can't sustain it. The United States is collapsing, and you're watching it happen in real time. Ryan, thank you so much for this. We're keeping our eye, of course, on this caravan throughout the holidays. Most people will be tuned into other things, unfortunately. Hopefully there's members of Congress who are watching this and will try to stop this, to do whatever we can to stop this, because it's fundamentally changing the United States of America right before our eyes. Thank you for this, Ryan. We appreciate it.
Clayton, thank you, man. Thank you for everything that you and your family do. God bless you, man. We appreciate you.
And thanks so much, Ryan. We really appreciate it. And thanks to the great team who's been doing some amazing work down at the southern border when the United States Congress and the Biden administration is doing nothing about it. So thank you to Ryan for his great reporting there.
Right. So we have more news to get to. We're going to talk about this WEF false flag, whether or not there was a piece missing from this censorship industrial complex we've been talking about. Whitney Webb is going to join us just in a few minutes to break that down. Plus, again, crocodile tears for Henry Kissinger from the grave of the hundreds of thousands of people, particularly in Asia, that he killed. Wonder who he met at the pearly gates when he went, or if he went in that direction. We're going to talk about that coming up. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at the Wellness Company, because, of course, we know the government is lying to you about the supply chain, about how secure you are in your life, because 90% of pharmaceuticals in the U.S. are produced outside of the U.S. So what happens when the next global crisis strikes? What happens if other countries decide not to do business anymore because of the collapsing dollar or because America's foreign policy? If the Wellness Company can do anything about it, they will help you get prepared. The Wellness Company's medical emergency kit holds 8 life-saving medications that every American should keep in their medicine cabinet. It's like having a doctor at home. So the kit contains antibiotics, antivirals, and antiparasitics, meds like amoxicillin, ivermectin, Z-Pak, plus a 22-page guidebook with instructions on safe uses. So whether you have tick bites to extreme bioterror events, every scenario is covered. It's basically an emergency kit for worst case scenario. And this is something I think about a lot, especially as we cover sanctions and how, the United States government decides that other places just don't get medicines because we're mad at their leaders. This is something that could be pointed back at us. And it's a nightmare to think about having a sick child that you don't have anything to help. So this is why, I'm always thinking about stocking up on medicines for worst case scenario. You should too. So check out these prescription emergency kits right now. Go to twc.health/redacted. You'll get 10% off at checkout. Again, it's great to just be safe, be prepared, and stay well. These kits are only available in the United States. So check them out, twc.health/redacted for 10% off. That's twc.health/redacted.
Well, the World Economic Forum, yes, run by Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum says that we will experience a massive cyber attack that will hit before the year 2025, which will lead to a massive collapse of the banking industry, infrastructure, and so much more. How do they know this? It's unbelievable. Someone who's been following this very, very closely, and it ties even more directly into the story that we've been covering here on the show about the CTI leak files, the Michael Schellenberger released files about the cyber spying on Americans. We're going to get to that part of the story with independent journalist Whitney Webb, who I'm thrilled to welcome back to the show. Whitney, welcome back to Redacted.
Hey, it's great to be here after a long absence. Thanks for having me back.
Of course, we wouldn't miss the opportunity. So thrilled to have you back here. So let's talk about this World Economic Forum idea that at the second in command at the World Economic Forum that we are going to see a massive cyber attack hitting before the year 2025, pointing out, in great detail, this is going to happen, so you better be prepared for it. Why are they saying this, and who are they going to try to point the finger at?
Right. So this was said at the WEF annual meeting earlier this year in January by the WEF managing director, Jeremy Jurgens. And Jurgens, as well as the WEF itself, has been involved in a series of simulations for several years now that I'm sure a lot of people in your audience are familiar with, called Cyber Polygon, which has been directly affiliated with Russia's government, as well as some of Russia's biggest banks and some of the biggest commercial banks in the world, and also backed by a lot of U.S. federal agencies, which is ironic when you consider, all about alleged Russian hacks over the years. They're very willing, under the guise of the WEF, to collaborate with the supposed hackers responsible for everything bad for several years ago. So that's quite revealing. But aside from Cyber Polygon, there's a lot that the WEF seeks to accomplish as it relates to the cyber realm And they've been collaborating in a lot of ways with these same big banks and also American intelligence agencies in unprecedented ways that has not really gotten any coverage over the past several years. And a lot of this is housed within a public-private partnership the WEF manages called the World Economic Forum Partnership Against Cybercrime. And this particular organization, back a few years ago, gamed out with the Carnegie Endowment, along with the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, so some of the biggest central banks in the world, as well as some of the biggest commercial in the world, like Bank of America and JP Morgan, how essentially the US financial system was due to be the victim of a massive cyber attack. And if you're familiar with how things have been going in the US financial or banking system recently, things are not in a very good state at all. And regardless of if there would be or will be a cyber attack in the near future, the banking and financial system in the United States is in deep doo-doo, right? So if you're the big banks and the intelligence agencies, you want to avoid what happened after the 2008 economic crisis, where there was unprecedented anger at Wall Street because the whole hope and change Obama psyop essentially is probably not going to work again. So how do you allow that collapse to happen, because it has to happen in such a way that the banks and the government are essentially blameless? Well, have a cyber attack happen, and you can literally blame any nation state or group for that hack. And we know this because of what WikiLeaks published right before Julian Assange was completely silenced and then later arrested and dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy in London, Vault 7, which revealed things like the Umbridge program, among other things, that U.S. intelligence and other intelligence agencies that are affiliated with this WEF partnership against cybercrime have the ability to place the fingerprints of any nation state actor they wish, including Russia, China, Iran, and really North Korea, any other group as well, not just nation states, put their fingerprints in a hack they actually commit themselves. And this is very significant because this offers, these intelligence agencies unprecedented ability to have to conduct false flag operations in the cyber realm. And this group specifically has a lot of solutions aside from, things with the banking system that they cannot really justify implementing unless there is some sort of large cyber attack. So what does the WEF Partnership Against Cybercrime want? They're very open that they want a regulated internet, and they're essentially seeking a policy that was efforts were made to implement during the Obama administration in the US. They called it a driver's license for the internet. So essentially what this public-private partnership that the WEF is pushing for is for every person's access to the internet to be tied to a digital ID or a government-issued ID, but presumably a digital ID, just because of where government-issued ID programs are all going essentially around the world. And the goal of that, of course, if your ID is linked to your internet access, intelligence agencies know exactly what media you are consuming in terms of what you read and also what you post online. And that has been the goal for a very, very long time. So people aren't necessarily going to consent to that unless they are made to believe that anonymity and privacy online are dangerous. So how exactly can you convince people that that needs to happen? Well, you have some sort of event where anonymous hackers do something online that causes major disruption globally, and then the consent can be manufactured through fear and panic, as is often done, that anonymity and privacy needs to be eliminated, that we need to know exactly who is doing what online to prevent a calamity of that scale from ever happening again. And this is the exact solution that these guys have been cooking for a very long time. And the intelligence agencies involved are Israeli intelligence, British intelligence, and then the U.S. Secret Service, FBI, and Department of Justice. And you have several of the biggest banks in the country, like Bank of America, involved directly with this group, as well as major U.S. tech companies like Microsoft and Amazon partnered with all of this. And this is exactly what they're seeking, and they have all the tools to allow something like this to happen. And when you have the fact that some of these actors want a war where the U.S., for example, goes to war with Iran, among other things, and they have the ability to attribute cyber attacks of any scale to any entity at all. And this is a big problem, because when these alleged hacks take place, whether it's blamed on Russia, Iran, or China, the headline will blame these countries. But if you actually read the article itself, they don't actually have the evidence to make that case. They say, we believe it's this country, or that it's a group affiliated with this country. And their reasoning ranges from, they'll say things like, we have medium probability that it's, they're tied to Iran, and, all these, phrases that show that they don't actually have evidence. And then there's an effort to manufacture consent, potentially for military action based on all of this stuff. So it's definitely very alarming, and people should be paying attention to it when you consider that you have the biggest banks involved, the biggest intelligence agencies, and some of the biggest tech companies in the world. And another thing that this WEF group is seeking is for banking regulators and intelligence agencies to essentially fuse their operations under the guise of cybersecurity. And the more you think about that, the more insane it is. I mean, it's just an insane policy.
Yeah, bringing it together under one umbrella. And of course, we even heard Nikki Haley, who's certainly the neocons absolutely love Nikki Haley right now, pushing her big time. She, over the past couple of weeks, has called for this lack of anonymity on the web, wants everyone to be registered as you're using the internet, right?
Yeah. And so have people, media personalities like Jordan Peterson, for example, has pushed for this same end of anonymity online. Right. And you also have people like Elon Musk, who bought Twitter, why he was buying Twitter, saying that we have to verify all humans and essentially, allegedly to control the bot issue on Twitter. But there's this broad push essentially everywhere you look, from the power elite to end online anonymity. And people are obviously resisting that because it changes the nature of the internet and supercharges the surveillance capabilities already built into it to a hugely significant degree. And it's a bigger problem when you consider that the Department of Justice specifically has a pre-crime program that they've been operating since the Trump administration called DEEP, where people have literally been arrested for things they've posted on social media. Someone was even killed, I think, a few months ago for Facebook posts he made about Joe Biden, and then was swatted and shot in the street in front of his house for posts he made on social media. Tying all of this to your government ID, considering, all of those factors as it relates to U.S. law enforcement and the Department of Justice, which again is partnered with all of these things, is an extremely awful idea. And the idea that, and the fact that you have all these financial services entities involved at the same time, there's this push for digital ID, not just for the internet, but to tie your digital ID to your banking through central bank digital currencies or heavily regulated stablecoins and deposit tokens. I mean, programmable money. I mean, the implications here are huge. And there's obviously a lot of resistance from certain quarters of the US population and elsewhere against the digital ID push and the CBDC push, but have the internet go down for X amount of time because of some massive cyber attack. And they bring it back and say, oh, well, we have to know who you are. And now the only way to get online is to use our digital ID. They're going to get the kind of fast, rapid onboarding and mass adoption that they are seeking for those programs.
Wow. Now, you believe that this cyber attack is a false flag operation. Is it your concern that Israel would want the United States to attack Iran first, that they wouldn't be able to do this? What does your reporting show on that side of it?
So it's not really just my reporting, it's reporting from mainstream media outlets, and also things that Mossad directors have openly said in interviews, is that for the past 20 years, Mossad has had almost unlimited funding and energy directed towards Iran regime change policy. And that a key component of that, according to former Mossad director Meir Dagan, among others, is getting the US to strike Iran first. And there's been a push for a long time from, the neocon sectors within the United States to have the U.S. preemptively strike Iran, among other things. And you had pushes coming from some of the biggest donors to the GOP. For example, Sheldon Adelson, when he was still alive, the biggest donor to the Republican Party and also to Trump, was also pushing for preemptive military action against Iran. You know, he isn't necessarily around anymore, but that type of policy idea has been floated for a very long time. And after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the IRGC general, who was very famous, there was rhetoric coming from Mike Pompeo when he was CIA director, and also Trump, that if Iran launched any sort of retaliation, including a cyber attack, they would respond with military action to Iran. So there has been a lot of fear-mongering about exactly this. And of course, it's important to keep in mind that next year, the exact year when the WEF managing director has predicted this attack is going to take place, is an election year in the United States.
Right.
And a lot of the same rhetoric about some imminent cyber attack, whether from Iran, Russia, and or China, was being utilized to a significant degree in the 2020 election as well. And you actually had what I've argued is an Israeli intelligence front company, a cybersecurity company called Cyber Reason, was gaming out and conducting simulations with DHS and some of our top law enforcement and intelligence agencies, how hackers could disrupt the 2020 election, have the election canceled and martial law declared, exactly what hackers would need to do for those conditions to be met. So there is a lot of stuff going on in the cyber realm that not enough people are paying attention to. And the most concerning thing about this, I would argue, besides the WEF warnings, is that you have a series of entities, many of which are tied to foreign intelligence, sitting on the most critical infrastructure systems in the United States, have access to those systems, and other groups have given access to those systems to people that haven't even been vetted by our own government. It's madness.
And is that tied to the CTIL files, which journalist Michael Schellenberger released earlier this week? We covered it extensively here on the show yesterday. The revelations that these CTIL files stand for Cyber Threat Intelligence League. And he claims that these revelations are like worse than the Twitter files, worse than Facebook, and that basically it's a global plan for censorship. According to these documents, the United States and UK military contractors. But I think, is that all tied to this? And I think you believe there's a huge piece missing from the reporting from Michael Schellenberger. It's almost like they conveniently left out one major piece of this story. Can you enlighten our audience as to what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote about the CTI League in August of 2020 because of this was before they really even got into the misinformation games. So they were founded in March 2020, and their main founder and the public face of the organization for years is an Israeli intelligence operative called Ohad Zaydenberg, and who also has been attributed numerous times in U.S. mainstream media reports as blaming various cyber attacks on Iran while working for a cybersecurity company tied to the Israeli government called Clear Sky. But the CTI League wasn't created, its initial mission was not related to targeting alleged misinformation at all. It was alleged volunteering to protect the critical infrastructure of U.S. hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and health insurance companies, and other corporations in the United States pro bono for free. It's very odd that you would have a group right as a crisis hits, right? The COVID-19 crisis starts, and you have this company run by a former intelligence agency is still collaborating with intelligence, foreign, by the way, not American, offering to protect critical American health infrastructure for free. People like this do not work for free. And the other people that co-founded this group with him.
So an Israeli intelligence guy forms this company as the head of this company and says, we're going to take care of American hospitals, dams, water infrastructure.
Dams come later.
Oh, okay.
Dams come later, but it was first health infrastructure. And they partnered with CISA, which is the independent agency operating under DHS, that's supposed to protect critical infrastructure, including election infrastructure, but also things like water systems, the power grid, all sorts of things like that, as well as hospitals. And the CTI League, created by Zadenberg, partners with them directly to protect all of this critical infrastructure. Misinformation, what Schellenberger and Taibbi have covered, is the side gig of the CTI League. Their main thing is to get on all these critical infrastructure systems, allegedly to protect them, but no one knows who works for the CTI League really, because in order to join it and get access to all of these systems, you don't have to be vetted by CISA or the US federal government. You have to be vetted by Ohad Zadenberg and the other co-founders who play a much more minor role than him in the organization, who are affiliated with either Microsoft or a U.S. government contractor called Okta. So you have these guys deciding who gets access to these systems and who doesn't. But anyone could get through that, essentially. It's extremely reckless, and beyond that. It's not just hospitals anymore. As you mentioned, it's expand to dams, it's expand to water systems, and also nuclear reactors in the United States. So you have a foreign intelligence founded or nonprofit being offered access to all of these critical systems in the United States. It's insane. And it's not really the only company that's like this. So the other company I mentioned earlier, Cyber Reason, that did these simulations about election doomsday with DHS and the FBI and whatnot. They have access to some of the most critical infrastructure of the U.S. military and a backdoor to all of it, essentially. And it's not run by American citizens.
How is this being allowed? I mean, how is this being allowed? And I mean, we know the deep connections between Israel and the United States, and we know the Israel lobby in the United States, but this goes deeper than that. And why do you think why would Michael Schellenberger leave out that part of the story? It sounds to me like a limited hangout. I mean, I know that your website is called, right? Like, I mean, this is like, the distraction over here. Let's just focus on misinformation. But this other massive piece of the story is that they have access to American infrastructure. Foreign governments have access to American infrastructure. Israeli government has access to American infrastructure.
Well, it's not just the Israelis either, because again, we don't know who was given access through the CTI League to these systems. Any nationality could have it.
So
we have no idea because they're not open about. Yeah, it's an extremely reckless policy. It's worth pointing out too that the head of CISA that oversaw this partnership with CTI League is an ex head of cybersecurity at Microsoft, and you have these Microsoft affiliations with some of the other co-founders, and of course Microsoft being arguably heavily compromised by Israeli intelligence, by Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell. I've done a lot of reporting on that with Ghislaine Maxwell's sisters being heavily involved with Microsoft through some of their companies, and then Jeffrey Epstein going on Microsoft Russia conferences, being very involved, of course, with Bill Gates, and also the chief technology officer of Microsoft for many years, Nathan Myhrvold. Just totally unreal. So what's going on here with CTI League I think is very significant, and I'm very disappointed that, I would like to give Schellenberger the benefit of the doubt and just hope he was not aware of what the CTI League does beyond misinformation. But if you go to the CTI League website, it's very obvious that they do a lot more beyond, the misinformation side of things, that their main focus is this alleged pro bono protection of critical American infrastructure. And what's also significant about this happening in the COVID era is that just as CTI League partnership with CISA, the HHS in the US cut hospital budgets that were supposed to help pay for their cybersecurity and IT maintenance. So at the same time that all this COVID stuff is going on, they don't have people protecting their IT systems. And then this group comes along and offers their services for free. So a lot of hospitals maybe that wouldn't have necessarily taken that offer took it because, government policy made it essentially a necessity for them to do so. And also in the pharma world, they ended up partnering, with Pfizer, with Merck, and some of the names there as well. So this is not just the corporate. This is not just, like the public sector that they're protecting from cybersecurity. So, given what's been revealed with the CTI League as it relates to censorship and their malfeasance there, why would they not practice similar malfeasance with their alleged protection of critical systems in the United States?
I was going to say, to bring it all back to the World Economic Forum. So if you launch this cyber attack, or you hear, oh, there's a cyber attack coming, I mean, it's like the perfect cover. You've literally got the assets in place to turn off critical infrastructure with your back-end team that you've already put together, and then blame it on Iran, right? I mean, is that the plan here? And then we launch an attack against Iran?
Ohad Zaydenberg's whole career has been focused on Iran and cyber attacks. And he's just been focused on Iran his entire career within Israeli intelligence. And now after he formally left and is working for this group affiliated with, Israeli government-owned entities and other intelligence operatives. And a lot of his more recent attributions of cyber attacks to Iran have no evidence. He says things like, this group acts like another Iranian cyber group used to act, therefore it must be Iranian, and doesn't provide any more detail than that. I mean, are we going to get roped into a war over something that's so devoid of any actual evidence? But unfortunately, mainstream media reporting about cyber attacks in general, regardless of whether it's attributed to Iran or another nation, very rarely have any actual tangible evidence to make that claim. And then even if they did, there's this whole factor of Vault 7 as revealed by WikiLeaks, and that you can frame any country or any group for a cyber attack. And as is often the case when these crises happen, there is no investigation until after the fact. And often investigations of like the 9/11 Commission, for example, is heavily compromised. So who knows what will happen there, but it's obviously very concerning. And as far as the World Economic Forum is related, that public-private partnership I was talking about earlier, the Partnership Against Cybercrime, is led by a career Israeli spy named Tal Goldstein, who developed this policy while Netanyahu, who's still prime minister, was prime minister back then in 2012, that operations that Mossad used to conduct in-house are now going to be conducted by private companies, particularly in the realm of cybersecurity. And that is when these groups, including Ohad Zaydenberg's Clear Sky and Cyber Reason, were created. And a lot of them with people with continuing affiliations to Israeli intelligence. And when you consider, again, that it's a directly known and admitted policy of Israeli intelligence to get the U.S. to strike Iran first at the time that the Israel security state determines that it's time to begin open hostilities and armed hostilities with Iran, which seems quite soon, given the conflict in Gaza and how that's escalated and likely to escalate into a regional war. They have wanted for decades the U.S. to strike Iran first. And how will they do that? I'm not saying they're definitely going to do it, but the fact that we're giving that exact government and people linked to that exact government access to our critical systems and all the means to do that is not a good idea.
Right. Yeah. You don't need to, it's Occam's razor, right? It's the simplest explanation for what's going to happen. And I hope that by, having you on here and exposing this, talking about, we've been warning from the very beginning of what happened on October 7th, watch out for false flags. Watch out for us being dragged into a regional war. Watch out for us being dragged into a war with Iran. We have a long history in the United States of false flag operations going back to the Spanish-American War and before. So this is not something new that the United States would pull off here in coordination with the Israeli government. Whitney Webb, I know you've been working very, very hard. You have some explosive new content coming out here very, very soon. We'd love to have you back on, perhaps after the holidays when you have those reports. We always appreciate it. It's always a tour de force, and you blow our minds every time you're on the show. So I just want to say thank you so much. Great to have you back on, and it's been a real pleasure to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. Great to be back on, especially after such a long hiatus. So really appreciate the invite. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Whitney. And my mind is always blown when Whitney is on the show with the amount of knowledge and depth of knowledge that she's able to recall, walking encyclopedia of corruption that she's able to pull from. So our thanks to Whitney. It was great to have her back on the show.
I still think she's one of those people that, like, if you were to go to her house, she's got all of the boards with the pins and the threads going from all the pictures, and like I bet her house just looks like that. It was like just strings everywhere, just like she's just following the threads.
She's like Sam Bankman-Fried, can Epstein to this, and it's amazing because she doesn't just do that for fun. I mean, it's there with the actual facts and supportive documents and unbelievable reporting behind it. So yeah, she's a true treasure. So thanks to Whitney for that. Coming up on the show, we're going to talk about Henry Kissinger. Because, wow, man, the neocons, it's like they were really crying last night. All the neocons got together and just shed a big tear last night over the death of one of the greatest war criminals of all time.
Would it be inappropriate to put up a poll about whether he went
up or down? Did he go to heaven or hell?
Would that be wrong? Okay.
Yeah, who knows what happens?
I'm not going to do that, but it's in my head.
We should just ask the question. We should just ask a poll, just one simple question. Where do you think Henry Kissinger is now? That's just a question. You tell us where you think he is. Let us know.
Soul Review.
Yeah, Soul Review. That's going to be a long Soul Review lesson. All right, we're going to get there in a second. But first, recent events have made the entire economic environment more complex, especially factors such as war and the Fed rate hikes, making it difficult to predict money. We did just get information that the Fed looks like, and this is why gold prices are surging, commodity prices are surging. And I get all of these alerts thanks to my friends over at Moomoo. But because now with Fed rate hikes possibly stopping and rate cuts perhaps coming in May of this year, in May of 2024, that is really good news. That could be really good news for real estate. It could be really good news for a lot of different things. So, but the US dollar dropping today on that news. Anyway, I get all those alerts thanks to our friends at Moomoo. You can set different alerts right inside the trading app. You can trade commodities. You can trade ETFs. It's not only a stock trading app. You can trade options, U.S. bonds, ETFs, all of it right there. No commission, no hidden fees. And what's best is that if you register right now, you're going to get a free SoFi stock. That's right. Up to 16 shares of stocks and a free SoFi stock. And these are all free, by the way. Moreover, what's most surprising about Moomoo is that they recently launched a rule-breaking product called Cash Sweep, which works with banks. And it offers an annualized return of 5.1%. This is one of the highest yields in the entire securities brokerage industry. No minimum threshold, no restrictions on the amount. So if you make a deposit into your account, you can store it in this Cash Sweep account and get a 5% return. So while it's sitting there. Why wouldn't you take advantage of it? That's a fantastic return because your local savings account at your local bank is like, 0.01%? That's crazy. So, Moomoo invested up to $1 million in FDI insurance for your funds as well. So you are protected, meaning your money is very safe with no risks. So I want you to check it out right now. All you need to do to try this and get this savings account set up is go to redacted.inc/Moomoo. Again, that's redacted.inc/Moomoo. You have to use that link. You'll get the 16 free stocks, including SoFi. Set up the 5% Cash Sweep account and start earning some annualized returns on some of that extra cash that you might have sitting there right now. So our thanks to them for supporting the show. All right, let me get a little swig of water because this sickness is still kind of lingering.
Oh, I thought you were just sickened by the idea of Henry Kissinger.
Oh, I am sickened by Henry Kissinger.
I can't wait. This was something that, Clayton brings up often in our studies of the constant war that our home country wages around the world. And so when I saw this news, I was like, honey, you got to take this one. This one
no problem.
Yeah, this one is on you. So here we go.
Here we go. Well, one of the worst mass murderers in American history has died at the age of 100. Let us all bow our heads for a moment of silence. Not for him, of course. We don't want to bow our heads for him, but for the millions of people who lost their lives because of Henry Kissinger, the man, Henry Kissinger, neocons falling all over themselves today trying to praise him. It's amazing to watch some of the tweet threads about it, about celebrating his life, the life of Henry Kissinger, a great diplomat, an amazing statesman. All the murders, just on the side. So he passed away last night at 100 years old, according to his consulting firm, which... It's like even in his death, they managed to get the fact out there that the Kissinger consulting firm still exists. They released the information. If you want to hire someone like Henry Kissinger, well, we're still here. We release the information. If you want to learn how to warmonger around the world,
the brand lives on.
The brand lives on. Call on the Henry Kissinger and Associates consulting firm. So yes, the Henry Kissinger consulting firm released the information. Not his family, not anybody in his family, but the consulting firm. Here was Sean Hannity last night, just stunned and sort of apoplectic about the death of one of his heroes.
This is Fox News alert, a staple of global politics, stable really for so many decades. Henry Kissinger tonight, sad news, dead at the age of 100. Now, Secretary Kissinger worked under multiple administrations. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for negotiating a ceasefire in Vietnam. There's so many other accomplishments this man has had. His life background and his experience is really beyond inspiring. He was a Jewish refugee. He fled Nazi Germany with his family in 1938. He arrived in the United States. He excelled academically, graduated from Harvard, and earned an MA and PhD degrees at Harvard. Really somebody that so many look up to in so many different ways and accomplished so much.
Yeah. He accomplished so much.
It's great to get a peace prize for the war that you started.
Right.
For ending the war that you started.
The one that you escalated, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. He got a Nobel Peace Prize for a war that was a false flag, like we started with a false flag.
Exactly. I mean, it's like being praised for putting out a fire that you started.
Right.
I mean, that's exactly what it is, right? Things that you escalated. You put it out? Oh, great. Let's give you an award for that. You're fantastic. It's like, President Bush releasing a statement this morning, fawning all over him as well. You can read this. Here is Kissinger dies. America has lost one of the most dependable and distinctive voices on foreign affairs with the passing of Henry Kissinger. I've long admired the man who fled Nazis as a young boy from a Jewish family, then fought them in the United States Army. President Bush says. The statement goes even further. He's not done yet, as he continues to move along and praise him even more. When he later became Secretary of State, his appointment as a former refugee said as much about his greatness as it did about America's greatness. He worked in the administrations of 2 presidents and counseled many more. That's right. And, by the way, we'll talk about that in a second. Then he says, he continues, I'm grateful for that service and advice, but I'm most grateful for his friendship. Laura and I will miss his wisdom, his charm, and his humor. And he will always be thankful. We will always be thankful for the contributions of Henry Kissinger. Now, he normalized relations with China. That's great. Yes, he was the only person to go into communist China and then normalized relations, opened up China, and he was sort of on his own in that regard. Yes, he did that. But even a headline this morning is going beyond China to call Henry Kissinger a sex symbol. I love this headline. Diplomatic colossus, Nobel Prize winner who stared down the Soviets and became a very unlikely sex symbol. The extraordinary legacy of Henry Kissinger, who fled the Nazis, became America's most influential Secretary of State. But can we talk about
basically reads like my bio.
Right. You stared down the Soviets.
So sexy.
Became a very unlikely sex symbol.
I mean,
other
he was
than the
Jason
flood the Nazis
Bourne.
part, that's the 100% on. That's me.
Right.
Yeah. He
like
was Jason Bourne. That's when I think of Jason Bourne. I think they fashioned that after Henry Kissinger.
It's like looking in the mirror. Yeah. You and Henry Kissinger. What were you going to say?
The Jason Bourne bit.
Oh, yeah. But can we talk about all of the murder for a second? It's like saying Bill Cosby was a great comedian. Yeah, but what about all the raping he did? It's like saying O.J. Simpson was a great running back. Yeah, but what about all the murdering? Kissinger is responsible for unimaginable horrors. And in an era before 24-hour news cycles. So imagine how much worse it would have been, or we would have learned more had we had actual cameras and 4K cameras and televisions to be able to capture what he did. All around the world, the horrors that he carried out. It wasn't just in Asia, it was in Latin America. Deaths of millions of people. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about how he had reporters from CBS and the New York Times in his back pocket, even had them wiretapping the newsrooms at their respective newsrooms? He stopped doing public speeches, of course, in front of uncontrollable audiences after people continued to interrupt his speeches, reminding us that he's a war criminal. Here's an example.
Go take calls for the arrest of Henry Kissinger for war crimes.
Arrest Henry Kissinger for war crimes. Arrest Henry Kissinger for war crimes.
Committee will stand.
I remember that moment. I don't know how many of you guys remember that moment when Code Pink reminded all of us how many millions of people were killed at his hands, and he gets called before Congress to testify because they want his advice once again. Senator John McCain wants his advice. War criminal, warmonger. Watch Senator John McCain call these anti-war protesters scum.
I've been a member of this committee for many years, and I have never seen anything as disgraceful and outrageous and despicable as the last demonstration that just took place about, you know, you're going to have to shut up or I'm going to have you arrested. Get out of here, you low-life scum.
What does he think happened in Vietnam? He was there.
What does he think happened in Cambodia? Does he care at all about it? No, he doesn't care. Why are they protesting? Well, let's talk about Kissinger's track record calling for the total carpet bombing of Cambodia, the escalation to perhaps end a war there, wiping out hundreds of thousands of innocent Cambodians, entire villages destroyed. He later claimed that they were unpopulated areas. Yeah, they're fields. There's nobody there. They're just unpopulated areas. And then in Chile,
Kissinger bombed the shit out of unoccupied areas just for fun.
Yeah. There's unpopulated.
That's what it's going with.
Right, exactly.
Nobody there.
So, what good did it do us? If they're unpopulated, what's the whole point of us doing it in the first place then? We're just going to, bomb these areas. In Chile, Kissinger installed the violent, oppressive Pinochet dictatorship, of course, disappeared tens of thousands of people who were executing their children and basically sold off. This was absolutely awful. And, Sting wrote a famous song about it called They Dance Alone. I encourage all of you to listen to that song and read the lyrics if you care to listen to it. If it doesn't bring tears to your eyes, then you're not hooked up right. The wives of these men in Chile were only allowed to protest by dancing alone with a picture of their husband. They couldn't speak about it publicly. If they spoke about the fact that the Pinochet government came in and stole their husband and killed them, they too would be, as Sting writes, wind up on the torture table and killed themselves. So the only thing they could do is in their quiet solitude basically dance alone with the memory of their husbands and their sons. As they were sold off, they're taken and sold off, and then many of them executed as well. One of the lines that really cuts through you, if you read the lyrics of this song, and you just sit back from it from a moment, it brings tears to my eyes. Can you think of your own mother dancing with her invisible son? Like she's dancing with a picture of her invisible son who was just taken away from her by this fascist government that the United States put in place, and Henry Kissinger was solely responsible in large part for doing. Kissinger aided Pakistan in slaughtering up to 3 million people in Bangladesh. Kissinger aided the Indonesian genocide against East Timor. 30,000 people killed in Argentina thanks to Kissinger. I mean, the list is endless. These are just the ones that he was a part of while he was in government, by the way. You saw there John McCain bringing him back in, we need some more advice on how to kill some people around the world. Let's get that Kissinger guy. He's really good at doing it. No American has...
I wonder if that means... I wonder if that means we're going to see an earmarked bill somewhere for the government buying Ouija boards so governors or generals can still consult him from the grave.
Right.
Well, no, we see he's still got a consulting firm.
Right. They don't. So. Yeah, we're going to go into the back room here and get out the Kissinger Ouija board and try to contact him.
Yeah. What would Kissinger do?
Because Ouija boards contact demons, right? And so it's demonic stuff. So yeah, that seems to me where he would be. He'd be winding up on an Ouija board. No American has killed at the scale of Henry Kissinger. None. Yale University historian Greg Grandin, author of Kissinger's biography called Shadow, estimates that Kissinger alone from 1969 through 1976 killed between 3 and 4 million people. One person who hated Henry Kissinger was Anthony Bourdain. Chef Anthony Bourdain. This clip is trending today because he saw Kissinger's destruction everywhere that he traveled. Watch.
Henry Kissinger walks into a bar. It sounds like a joke. Henry Kissinger and a penguin walk into a bar. I'm not asking what you do, but would it displease you if I walked over and punched Henry Kissinger in the face? Would you find that entertaining?
I would.
Would you have a frisson of pleasure even? Would you feel that justice is in some small way served?
You hate Henry Kissinger.
I fucking hate him.
Yeah.
Because in my travels, I stumble across his good works everywhere I go.
Right. Let's do this.
A rabbit punch.
No kidney punch.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys. Oh, my.
What does a penguin have to do in that joke?
I don't know. It's just pick anyone.
Oh,
Just to shove in there, I guess. Anthony Bourdain once said this. He said, once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. If you go to Cambodia and you see the wrath, the destruction of what he caused, of course you'd want to strangle him with your bare hands. So, yeah. Neocons falling all over themselves today. The ADL coming out, supporting and throwing their love behind Henry Kissinger. What a man he is, and what a statesman, what a diplomat. Just forget about all the 4 million people, 5 million people that he helped kill. Just look past that.
Well, funny enough that the ADL posted a tweet saying that Henry Kissinger was a proud Jew, and they were fact-checked by the community on Twitter or X, saying this is misleading because Henry Kissinger was in fact apologetic about his Jewish heritage, especially around Nixon and the White House counsel. They recall him saying bad things that I'm not going to say here about Jewish people. So, this is a very complicated legacy. It's interesting to see how people are using it to their advantage, to whatever narrative they want to bend.
You would think you would think that the ADL, which has been under massive amounts of scrutiny for their corruption, you think they would have sat this one out.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't need to put out a tweet about Henry Kissinger.
Right.
You just think about
we should be quiet about this one?
Yeah. Can we?
No, let's put it out there.
Yeah, just tweet it. Let's post something about this war criminal. Let's do it. Let's show our support for him. And he won the Nobel Peace Prize because, Republicans at the time pushed him, towards that side to get a Nobel Peace Prize. It's like Obama getting a Peace Prize.
Right. Yeah.
Bombing
happy Obama.
Right. He gets a Peace Prize.
Barack drone Obama.
What a joke.
How many deaths do you have to be responsible for? What is the cap? What's the maximum amount they'll allow for you to get the Nobel Peace Prize? Is it 2 million, 3 million?
Yeah.
Where's the cut?
I would love to ask that question. If I ever had a chance to interview him, that would have been my first question with a microphone. Hi, Mr. Kissinger. Thank you so much for joining us. I have a question. How many people do you have to murder in order to get the Nobel Peace Prize?
Well, he's dead. So.
Oh, I can't ask him now.
You can't ask that now.
You can't ask him now.
Your chance has
Can't ask him now.
But he lived a long life.
To Obama, he got it pre-murders, right?
No.
No, he got
Absolutely, he did not.
He got it concurrently with murders.
At the end of Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Obama.
No. I'm talking about Obama.
Yeah.
No. Obama got it in the midst of the murders.
Yeah, in the midst of his bombing.
Wow.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. They looked the other way at all the people in the Middle East that Obama was waging wars on, and still gave him the Peace Prize.
Yeah.
That's abhorrent.
So there you go. That's Redacted. We'd love to tell you about our Plus Club. Now, people have been asking, when are we launching the book club for our private Plus Club members? When is that going to happen? Do we have a date yet? I know the holidays are crazy. Are we launching it here during the holidays, post-holidays? When is the book club launching on our Redacted Plus community? I saw a bunch of people asking about it last night. So when will Natalie's book club? It's going to set the world on fire.
Is it?
It is, because we're going to be doing live streams. You can follow along and read the books that we're reading here on the show and comment and join the live stream. It'll be just for Redacted Plus members. And of course, we had the holidays, we have Thanksgiving and everything. So I know everything's kind of crazy right now with the holidays, but let's pin down a date and we will publish that in our community, our locals community. And we will also do exclusive live streams for the community that are not just the book club, but community live streams where we can get together and hang out. We had a great one a few weeks ago. It was great to hang out with the audience just for our community members and to get to know you guys better. We really appreciate it. Exclusive content and interviews. We have a really awesome interview with a former FBI whistleblower who's going to be released. This video will be released to our community first, and you will get access to it before anybody else if you're a member of our Plus Club. All you need to do is go to redacted.inc and just join our Plus Club. Click on the community button there. You get access to exclusive content for the price of a cup of coffee once a month. It's very, very cheap, and you can support independent journalism and support our team here at Redacted. Again, this show is totally free, so you don't have to pay anything to watch the show on Rumble, on YouTube, on X. But if you'd like to go above and beyond and get access to exclusive content and support us, head on over to redacted.inc and join our Plus Club. All right.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us this week. We'll have content for you over the weekend, and we will be back live on Monday, every Monday through Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for joining, everybody. We'll see you next week.